Welcome to Graded Podcasts.
Mavuso Msimang is a South African civil servant and politician. With a substantive political background, Mavuso is widely recognized as a leader of change in South Africa with experience in transforming institutions. He is the co-founder of African Parks, a Johannesburg-based conservation organization, and has also served as CEO of South African National Parks. He currently chairs Corruption Watch and serves on various civic society, environmental management, and private sector boards. He is a highly admirable individual who was a fighter against apartheid and is an ANC veteran. Welcome, Mavuso. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks very much for inviting me. It's quite an honor, actually, to be on this platform.
Cool, thank you. So to start us off, what is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book right now, gosh, I don't have a long-standing one, but there's something that talks about the billionaires and millionaires of the African National Congress. That's what I'm reading right now.
What have you learned from that book?
Yeah, what I learned from that book is that the transition from apartheid to where we are today, to democracy, was very costly, was very intricate. There were people of goodwill like Nelson Mandela and others, and a lot of good was done. I think South Africa is in a much better place today than it was then. But in the process of doing that, a lot of faux pas happened. And the result is that we are paying that. It needs to be fixed. I'm not quite sure exactly how it should be done. South Africa is not doing well. I came from that background, and you'll excuse me if I venture into these kinds of things. I absolutely think that South Africa can turn around, can achieve a turnaround, and I put some of my efforts, little as they are, towards achieving that.
In your opinion, what are the solutions to fix South Africa's issues at the moment?
I think the cause of the problem is corruption. Maybe before corruption, the cause of the problem is that the ANC, as the governing party, did not seem to realize the responsibilities that came with the transition from being an organization, a liberation movement, to being a governing party. So it was always risky to join the African National Congress in the past because they would put you in jail or kill you or deny your family things. It changed completely after 1994. So a lot of the people who came in at the time came for a different purpose, a lot of them, not all of them, than what people used to join the ANC for. So the vetting should have been stronger, the auditing of membership, finding out how much people have done for the community and all of that. The poor vetting has led us to where we are, the corruption and all of that, because a lot of people came because there was an opportunity to make money or get employment if you join the ANC.
You discussed apartheid. Could you tell us a bit about your childhood and how your environment was growing up during apartheid?
I was born in 1941 in Edendale, outside Pietermaritzburg. And at the age of about 5 or 6, I left that area to go and live in Messondale, which is outside Newcastle in KZN. That's my maternal grandfather's place. Believe you me, by the way, up to the age of 10, I didn't realize that my parents had divorced. That's how life was there. I was just at home and all of that. But I spent a fair bit of my boyhood years, all of them, in Messondale, and took a lot after my maternal grandfather, who had a huge farm. One of the few Africans who were allowed to buy land on freehold at the time. And he owned, he was a farmer, cattle and agriculture. And he had an interesting thing about him is that he owned his cattle, which he used to inspan to pull the double share and the wagon and other things. They had names of the statesmen of the time. I grew up knowing that One of the oxen was called Stalin. There was another called Bismarck, von Borg, Goering, and so on. So these are the names you get up as a 7-year-old and go out and say, Goering, what's happening to you now? So it broadened my understanding of the world much broader than certainly Newcastle or even South Africa and so on. And my grandfather used to read good literature, although I was in the countryside, where there wasn't much access to information. A lot of the material came on mail, which was delivered 3 times a week. You didn't just go to the shop and buy a newspaper. You waited for a post bag to be delivered, and opened that and found yesterday's Star today or the day after, the 2 days after. Anyway, I'm really talking so much about my grandfather because I think he influenced me a lot, and I became what I was. I think without him trying to make me that, just looking at his principles. In Bantu education, you talk about growing under apartheid. They were trying to introduce something called Bantu education, and my grandfather and other people were invited to serve on boards of this system that was meant to introduce inferior education to Africans. And at one time, my grandfather was asked, they were being encouraged to let their children learn in their vernacular languages. So we had to do Zulu. I come from the Zulu area. And they were saying there's no need to learn English. And my grandfather was asked if he didn't agree that was a good thing. And my grandfather said, well, I understand your own daughter is in England right now. You're African and he's learning English. I would like that to happen to my children too. So that kind of taking that position and challenging the status quo is part of what my grandfather was.
You obviously worked with a South African hero, Nelson Mandela. What was it like working with Nelson Mandela?
Didn't quite work with him because he was imprisoned just as I was coming out of high school. I finished my high school matric in 1960, and the ANC was banned in 1960. And in 1961, we no longer saw Nelson Mandela. He went underground and left the country to receive military training in a number of places. I think he went to Ethiopia and was mobilizing support for a struggle that had been forced, military struggle on the people. I mean, when you ban an organization, political organization, and say it can no longer exist, you leave them with 2 options, either to die or to continue in different means. And as Mandela said, well, we've chosen to continue living, and the only way we would live was underground and trying to learn how to handle violence, controlled violence for the achievement of freedom. So Mandela went to prison. An interesting thing about this, Mandela was arrested, I think, in 1961. I was at the university then, and later his friends, the High Command of the African National Congress, was arrested in Rivonia while I was on my way to exile to study, because we were about to be arrested at university because of our political activities in support of a banned organization. But I decided that I was not going to go to study because the most urgent thing to do was to study war. So I went for military training, which I did in Moscow over a period of about a year, and came back. And the Tanzanians gave us a place to be at a transit camp. And the hope was that we would soon get back to South Africa and mobilize people from underground and prepare them for the struggle. So, yeah, absolutely.
Do you think Nelson Mandela felt successful at the end of his life after all the struggles?
He was absolutely, unquestionably successful. There's no doubt about that. The achievement of democracy for South Africa in 1994 was, a big event for the country, landmark in the history of the nation in the past and in the future. 1994 will be regarded as a very important landmark in this nation. So he achieved that together with his friends, and he was very proud of that achievement. Of course, once you start running government, pitfalls are noticed and shortcomings. There are things really that upset him, like, for instance, the ANC's position on HIV and AIDS. And he spoke very strongly against that when eventually it became very clear that we were pursuing a disastrous route. So Mandela, I think, died with some misgivings about certain things, but he was absolutely, must have felt vindicated that spending 27 years in jail was worth the sacrifice.
In your opinion, what do you think the differences are between the ANC today and the ANC back when apartheid ended?
Well, it's precisely what we talked about a short while ago. You had people who had made a lot of sacrifices, personal sacrifices, to achieve freedom. And the sacrifices took the form of going to prison, of leaving the country and in exile, leaving family, of facing not having opportunities to be employed because you are known to be associated with the struggle. People who made those sacrifices achieved, felt vindicated that their sacrifices for a good cause when freedom was achieved. I think at the time of the achievement, at the time of the transition, the great things that happened then, for instance, were the development of the South African Constitution. I mean, it's rated quite correctly as one of the great constitutions of the world. It calls upon South Africans to do things, got a Bill of Rights, which really would have been unthinkable for people who had been suppressed, and you would want to say, let's get our own back. And the ANC, the people of the time, you're asking about the ANC today and the ANC then, insisted that there should be full democracy, accountability. The judiciary was made independent and supreme. And I think that has stood the country in good stead. The difference really between then and today is that the ANC has allowed into its leadership a lot of people who did not really subscribe to the values that the founding fathers of the ANC or of the Constitution in democratic South Africa subscribed to. So we are in some serious problems which we need to resolve. The ANC of today is losing the confidence and the support of the people. At one time, the ANC had more than 2/3 majority in parliament. Today, people are wondering whether in the next election, the ANC will even cross the line. That's the difference. The confidence that people are losing in the ANC. That is increasing all the time, and it is a consequence of a leadership that puts in place incompetent people to serve the nation, that is insensitive to issues of nepotism, and that has a lot of people who are facing criminal charges or will soon do that after what we call the Zondo Commission made a recommendation that to deal with the problems of state capture. I hope you are familiar with that state capture thing. People must be Commissioner Zondo, sorry, the Zondo Commission, which was chaired by the now Chief Justice, recommended that some of the people, a lot of whom are in the ANC, should be referred to criminal justice institutions to be charged either by the National Prosecuting Authority or the SIU. So that's the difference. In a nutshell, it would be we now have a lot of people really who, in the past, ANC people would be the political reason for imprisoning leaders would have to do with the politics they were pursuing. Today, you have got a leadership that is being prosecuted for criminal offenses. So that is the challenge of the ANC and the challenge of the nation, because the ANC does happen to be the governing party. And when you look at the political party landscape in South Africa, we don't have much to cheer about. With the major organizations, which is the DA, the Democratic Alliance, sometimes one gets the impression that they don't know that 1994 happened, in the way they conduct their business. Then we've got another party called the Economic Freedom Front. Is that what it is? EFF, we use these acronyms, who also have a leadership that has got questionable characters at the top. So that's the difficult situation in which South Africa is in today. So if the ANC lost the elections in 2024, you're not quite sure that based on our experience to date of coalitions, that you'll have any stable government at all. So we must be careful for those who want the ANC out of here, what we wish for.
As a voter, why should my vote go towards the ANC?
I wouldn't say you should do that. I would really want you to check what they are doing, not just promising to do, and really decide how you'd want to contribute to the broadening of democracy in South Africa. Many people are now talking about a new format, a new structure, the political parties, which are the traditional way of organizing politics and governance in a country. That's experiencing difficulties right now. And of course, bringing in alternatives is not going to be an easy thing, but how do people claim back democracy? What role? I would encourage you to be quite active in looking at how this country, such a major country, such a big country with so much potential, how best should it be governed? I don't invite you to be a politician, but to be very critical. Don't just vote something because it's the ANC or DA or any of those things. Yeah.
In your opinion, what does success look like for a country or society?
Success in any country, in any society, would be defined by a good standard of living for the majority of the people, meaning the absence of poverty or an absolute minimum of that. Success is defined by people being in employment, so that they can marshal their talents towards improving the overall well-being of the country, technological developments and all of that. But also, people must be secure, must be safe. There must be protection. That would be, if we achieve that, we would qualify to be called a peaceful, successful country. We don't have that right now. I mean, criminals are running riot and acting almost with impunity. That has to change, otherwise we can't call ourselves a successful country. We've got just too many people we have to import skills into this country in spite of the long tradition of education. Of course, it was a segregated education because we don't have a proper match of skills to develop, to contribute to the development of the economy. So, successful country is one that has good levels of employment, that has good security, that has minimum levels of poverty, and all of that. All of these things that I'm talking about, we don't have in South Africa right now.
We're discussing success as a society. What is your personal definition of success?
My definition of success is the achievement of what's essential for an acceptable livelihood. I'm successful if I achieve the objective that I set for myself. I would say success is defined really in the ability to achieve what needs to be done to fulfill your wishes, serious wishes. So you're successful if you're able to look after your family, if you have a family, if you're able to achieve an education and get to where that education takes you. It's broad, but it's the accomplishment of your objective is what I would describe as success.
Have you achieved that level of success yet?
It's a mixed bag. There are certain objectives that I set myself, and I needed to raise a family and raise it comfortably, in the sense that I was able to put them through, my kids through school, and they all achieved a good education. I would say that was successful. I participated in the struggle to get to achieve freedom for South Africa, and we achieved it. I am a little part of that success. But also, I am happy that I can make friends. I have the confidence to believe in people and not be uncomfortable because I'm in the presence of achievers. I think I can do anything that other people can do. If it's in my line of training and so on. I would regard myself modestly, but I would regard myself as successful.
And what's the next step in your journey?
Other than becoming a part of Rhinomics, I would really want to be a part of I want to be part of the effort that really would take South Africa, without being in politics, contribute together with others to getting South Africa to become to realize its potential. I am spending in a given day maybe 30% right now of my time working with people who are trying to make sure that we change our rather difficult situation for the better. I'm doing that within the African National Congress, and many people say, "Oof, that is absolutely hopeless." And I do it also with people who are just like-minded with me thinking. So 30% of my time is spent doing that. I'm also trying to write and document my experiences. And I think I'll be able to do that if all goes well, health-wise and so on. So I think I will succeed in doing these things, and I should be able to persuade many people that this country ought to be fought for, ought to be developed to a point where it can realize its potential.
You discussed about writing about your experiences. How have those experiences influenced you?
Well, my experience is really, I think part of it would be what do you say, a memoir. I've spent a bit of time trying to trace my genealogy. It's not always easy for Africans in South Africa to know where they came from because we were not literate. We didn't have an education. Our great grandfathers weren't. I'm fortunate in that my own met missionaries and who assisted them with the education and brought them into the economy, colonial as it was. But that's how that was the only way to survive. So I'm looking at that. What did they benefit from that association, and what has our family benefited? I told you about my grandfather, maternal, who owns farms. I mean, that was part of their struggle at the time. So we have the ability to run our own things and so on. To some extent, they do that. So I want to document that. But I also want to share the experiences I had in South Africa, but particularly, say, in exile. You know, people think about exile as a place of punishment, a place of sorrow, and all of that. No, there were people there, amazing characters, who did a lot of things. You know, by the way, our guys were so good in soccer that in Tanzania, 5 of them were approached by the top clubs to play for the country, even for the national team. You had musicians in the camps, singers, and it would really be the evenings on weekends were exciting moments. And then you had just characters who had amazing stories, who about whom amazing stories can be said. I met a guy there who knew about traditional medicines. He went to the bush in Tanzania and found some herbs that were very helpful in treating an infection that had hit our guys. I can tell you it was a venereal disease, and people had become immune to penicillin. Small group it may have been, but they came up with a drug and mixed it in the camps there and administered it to these guys to drink. And we used to call it up and down because you could drink it or you could use it to spray it. So these are the stories and more that would feature in my book when I write about that. And of course, my experiences in living in Africa, outside South Africa, the extent of support that was given to the struggle here, the experiences I lived in Canada for a while. I worked for international organizations in development and so on. I think these are things that would come out, and I would really, I think I would be accurate if I claimed that some of the experience I gained working for organizations like CARE International, like the World University Service of Canada, I came back to apply them when I was given responsibility to lead I think one of the first organizations I led post 1994 was South African tourism. I also worked for the national parks and a number of others at the level of CEO. As a generalist, I knew nothing about it. I studied entomology, it's the study of insects, and I really never once used that educational training. But the generalized, the broad, fortunate experience I had, I think helped quite a bit in my contribution to run the organization that I was charged with running.
What were your biggest challenges as head of Sandbox?
The biggest challenge in the organization that I led predictably, I mean, you don't even have to guess, this was the Department of Home Affairs. When I went to that organization, there had been a crisis. The Auditor General had refused. I mean, the organization got a disclaimer in its account, in its report, just refused to give an opinion. The CEO, I think it was, had left the organization because there was a dispute between himself and the minister. And I think the minister at the time went to cabinet to say, can you help us, cabinet, to fix this organization? And it was agreed that they would do that and that they would recruit a new person into the organization. And that new person happened to be myself. Could have been anybody else. And so we started from really almost a very low base, dealing with issues of incompetence, corruption, demoralization, etc., etc. I think you just need other people to tell you how much Home Affairs changed when we were there. In the 3 years that we were there, we had a good team of consultants, and they advised us in the improvement of logistics and Home Affairs. I can say when I joined Home Affairs, the first press conference I had, or radio interview, the callers were asked to comment as I was talking about what I'd done in the first 100 days. And I think 90% easily of the people were so negative about the Department of Home Affairs and so despairing of any chance that anything could be achieved. But a year later, 80%, and I think there are records for this, people were approving and saying, yeah, no, it's great. This department is going places. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa said we were the best government department in the use of IT. Princeton University, since you asked me, said the changes that we had made were irreversible. I think if they came now, they would notice that some of it has been reversed. But I mean, it was phenomenally good. It gave me a good feeling that I was part of a team that significantly improved the performance of a department that was failing, and yet that is so central in the lives of South Africans.
And are there any sacrifices you've made to achieve that success?
Without success, I don't think one succeeds in everything that one wishes. If I had my way, I would have studied to a level of PhD. I did not fail to do that. There are just a number of too many things that seemed to present themselves as greater priorities than doing that. But I do wish, and I still entertain a hope that at 81 years of age, I could still do some studies and take 2 years and get a PhD in ethical management. You
studied at the University of California. I also want to go to the US to study. Can you tell me a bit about what it was like?
It was actually, I studied at their campus in Kenya, and it was an MBA that I did there. It was absolutely phenomenal, by the way. I just found the American system, having come from the British one at the time, quite practical and refreshing, especially in the business area. That was my impression. I'm not placing any judgment better than what experts know. But even the math that I did, we always struggled and thought math was a difficult thing. But the manner in which Americans taught mathematics, I mean, the quadratic equation, you used it to solve the problem. The Americans showed you how to formulate the quadratic equation itself. It was. I mean, then my marks. I scored very high marks in mathematics, which was a real change. So, but in business, I had not been exposed, and I haven't really been exposed in business. I thought that MBA program was exceptionally good in helping me understand financial management, the budget, everything, to be able to read financial statements and all of that. It's critical. I mean, I think in life you don't need to do an MBA to know how to do that. I think everybody must understand how to do that because that's what the world is today. But that MBA course really opened my eyes to a lot of things.
What is the most important risk you've taken and why?
The most important risk was going into the war area in Zimbabwe, which was called Rhodesia at the time, in the eastern part, where there was a high probability of an encounter with the Rhodesian soldiers. It was risky. There was a time when I think they were somewhere in the area, and we were in the area too, and they were they retreated and we retreated, because I think both of us were not familiar with the area. So those were quite risky moments when you could have been shot by somebody you didn't see or in a face-to-face thing, but you just think I'm facing another human being who is as vulnerable as I am in certain given situations. So that was that risk in terms of life, but risk. I think it was risky to also take my family to Canada. We didn't go as refugees, but they give you something they call a landed immigrant status, and you're allowed in provided you find your way around. You're not going to be given food or camps or accommodation or any of those things. And I was really ready that if I didn't get a job, I needed to take my kids there. And if I didn't get a job, a nice job, which I thought suited my experience, I would work in the filling station if I needed to until such time that I started. So it was a risky decision to go into a country when you're not certain that you'd be employed. But it was important for my kids.
How have these experiences influenced you?
You get to understand that life actually is a succession of risks. You've got to take a chance, a calculated chance, a reasonable chance. But if you don't take the gap, you will not achieve anything. It's very rare that things are just presented to you to make use of and succeed. So I think going for me into any job always had an element of risk because I managed institutions which were highly specialized. The state IT agency, I mean, I knew nothing about that. Even after I left, I didn't know too much about it. But I think you have to have the confidence based, of course, on certain basic meeting basic requirements that you can do it. I think as individuals with a certain level of education, there are very few things that you would not be able to do. That's what I believe. I said a little earlier that I really was driven by a feeling that I can do anything that other people can do, apart from being a scientist or being intellectual in that kind of manner. But jobs that people do can be done. I think I can do.
We're discussing risks and how they've influenced you. What has been your lowest point and how did you get from there to where you are now?
The lowest point, I have to say, it was not just one point. It was very disappointing to find oneself spending as much time outside South Africa when I had thought that within 5 years of leaving the country, I'll be back in the country, I'll be back in the country doing something. It wasn't always nice to sit idle, to sit in the camps waiting for opportunities. I was fortunate to be in planning groups, so you tried something, but I have to say there was a time when it seemed it would just take forever to win freedom in this country. The only good thing was that we absolutely knew that freedom would be won, whether in our lifetime or after us, that we were on a good cause, and discouraging as it was that this wasn't happening fast enough, but that it was going to.
How would you describe your journey from there to where you are today?
It's been a reasonably okay journey. Came back to South Africa. I think we touched on this in some of the remarks I made earlier. And I worked coming back. First job I did was to work for an NGO in KwaZulu-Natal that was involved in providing reticulated water systems, environmental education, supporting agriculture, and all of that. It was a tremendous learning experience for me, for the first time now, working with my own people, doing community work and so on. It didn't succeed, I must admit, because I think the leadership at the time was so much into politics, most of them, that they didn't realize that there was a requirement for accountability. The money that we used was provided by the European Union through Kagiso Trust, and we had to account for it. And when, as the CEO, I would call people and would say, guys, let's sit down and explain what we've achieved with the funds that we've been given. Sometimes people thought we're not accountable to Brussels and so on. So well, if you take Brussels money, then you must account for it. But we stopped. The leadership and Kagiso Trust agreed that project had to be canned because really, unfortunately, the leadership was not quite up to it. Okay. So how was the journey? That was the first experience. I worked for SA Tourism. It was called SATU. I must say, although the board was very supportive, the person at the top, I like him, so I won't mention names. It was just the minister was not really quite up to it, and we're not going to continue functioning in the old way. What needed to be done was to restructure, reorganize, and reposition SA Tourism to what it is today. It was done by people subsequent to my departure. But I would move on and do other things. But on the whole, I'm fortunate that I've been able to move on. I never really wanted to stay for too long in one organization. I earned myself the name of Mr. Fix-It because I think once the problem was resolved, I would want a new challenge. And to the extent that I really ran 4 or 5 organizations successfully. The comment of the day, if you were to check the records, newspapers, and public opinion, was that we were achieving successes. So it gives me some comfort. So that's my answer to how has it been, how have I used my experience, yeah.
Are there any habits or skills one needs to develop in order to become a successful individual in your field?
I think so, yes. It depends on what you want to do. Really, you have to train, learn get up to a certain level of skills requirements. You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a business person. I think you have to get the elementary, achieve the elementary requirements for that kind of profession. But I find that what is most important is the ability to work with people, the ability to trust people, delegate responsibilities to people, and give them the confidence, because very few of these things are done by individuals. It's teamwork. But your leadership must be unquestionable, and it's not stated in the form of you're not holding a whip and beating at anybody. My style is that would be that I would like people to do the job, A, because it's essential to do it, they're convinced that it should be do it, and to relate to me in a manner that is mutually reinforcing, not to fear that this guy is going to catch me and so on, but rather to not want to disappoint this guy who is supporting a collective effort to do things. Very collective. My approach to working with people is that of working as a team, teamwork, absolutely. So I think it's something that would help anybody.
Is there one piece of conventional advice that you disagree with most strongly?
That I disagree with. What's conventional wisdom? The ANC is having some problems today, and people usually respond by saying, once a liberation movement achieves government, way of thinking changes, and in 15 years or 20 or whatever, you can be sure that they are no longer fit for purpose. I actually disagree with that. I think when you are guided by a clear program, clear objectives, and function ethically, you can serve for as long as there is a requirement, for as long as people have confidence in you. I hate to cite this example of Lee Kuan Yew, who really took Singapore to great heights over a long period of time. So dispute, so which means that the theory that after a number of years, then you are no longer fit for purpose. And so he took in Singapore to the level that we all know and respect today. I don't think the methods that you always use, the democracy, is appreciated by many people. But believe you me, I think people must not make use of truisms that are not quite truisms. Generalities like I think you need to develop a set of principles in order to guide whatever you want to do, and use that to move forward.
Unfortunately, running out of time here because you have to go to your flight. If you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
I would say it's a difficult question. There's no easy answer to that. But I think it's important that you have self-confidence in the things that you do. Be serious in the first instance. And and develop the confidence that you can achieve what you want to achieve, and go out and work on it. You are able to do what you have planned and prepared for. You must go for it, whatever difficulties come along the way.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining me, and you've definitely inspired me along with many other teenagers who are going to watch this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Difficult questions you asked me.
Good answers though. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks very much, sir.